Okay, I'm gonna time myself.
I'll be the timekeeper, okay?
Cause that day I
Yeah,
over
yeah. Sorry for that. I
Cannot.
often
clock.
7 minutes, okay?
Hmm. Stopwatch.
7 minutes.
Okay, so here lah. 3, 2, 1. A breakup. Anyone who has experienced it knows that a breakup is horrible. It gives you an uncontrollable feeling of sadness, grief, and general emptiness. People often after breakups will feel suicidal, they might cut themselves, they'll feel terrible depressions, and some even lead to substance abuse because of it. Now, why do people feel this way after a breakup? Because breakups can be particularly traumatizing. So much of your life that has been tied to this person, and suddenly it's all not there anymore. So many memories, the movies you watch together, the food that you eat together, the music that you listen to, all of them suddenly gone, and all of them suddenly becoming something completely perverse. Now, we on site government believe that it is the best in the best interest of a person to want to forget these particularly traumatizing breakups. And we believe that a person would voluntarily want to use this device and forget these memories. We believe this is so because a person would want to be able to instantly forget that thing, that memory that caused them so much harm because of all the grief that is connected to that memory and all the negativity surrounding that memory and all the bad effects that it has brought to them. So that is why they would want to instantly do it. Now, why is this so? I'm sorry, before I move on, first, a couple of caveats. We believe on side government that obviously anybody who would want to take this step of wanting to completely forget someone and everything about them, this is a decision that people don't just suddenly do, right? So people will obviously think things through and really, really sit down and think about things and analyze whether it is worth remembering this person, maybe remembering their friends and all, before they take this next step. And even with this, it's still something that people would want to do. Now, why would people want to forget a relationship? People who want to forget relationships are people who have been particularly hurt in a relationship. Either they were physically hurt, mentally hurt, or many other things. Or perhaps they themselves were the persons who dumped the other person and they caused that person a lot of grief, sorrow, etc. And they can't sleep over it. They feel lots of guilt over doing this. So these are the kinds of kind of people who would benefit from using this device and who would want to voluntarily use this device. Obviously, they would want to forget these emotions because it will make them feel better as a person and also be able to carry out their daily life. Now, why do we on site government believe that people would want to voluntarily take this and what benefits will bring them? My point will be on how it's better for their mental well-being. Now, why is it better for their mental well-being? Because previously, when you are in these relationships, the things you did before are things that you did with this other person. And usually, when you are in a relationship with someone, the things you do with someone will be things that you really enjoy, your hobbies, other things you enjoy. So this can be in the form of, for example, a TV series that you like to watch, a sport that you love to play, and maybe you introduce this sport to this person, or maybe that is how you met them. um, so after the breakup, whenever you try and do these things that you enjoy, suddenly you'll find that you will not be able to enjoy them because every time you do it, all you can think about is this person, and everything you do will be thinking about this person. So you'll no longer be able to do the things that you enjoyed doing before. So what happens when you use this device, right? Now suddenly you are able to do those things that previously caused you grief just thinking about it. So you can go back to being who you were before, and you can do the things that bring you joy. And what happens when you are able to once again tap dance, once again able to go to clubs again, once again able to eat maybe that pasta that previously you couldn't. Now, when you are able to do these things, you can feel good again. It will bring lots of positivity into your life, and this will in turn improve your mental health. So, why would someone want an improved mental health? So, obviously, having an improved mental health would allow that person to be able to do things again, to carry out their life as normal. Generally, all these things are things that help to relieve your stress. So when you were not able to do these things, you your stress was greatly compromised, and now you do not feel those kinds of stresses anymore, because you are able to go on and do these activities, and this in turn helps to improve your mental health. And with an improved mental health, you yourself can be a better version of yourself, because you are now free from any mental
Point.
hang up. Yes, go on.
Okay, do you or do you not agree erasing the memories of someone at that specific point of time, like what you have said, in terms of them becoming sharing sport and stuff, you're actually erasing the memory or their skill or their experience in a certain sport?
um it can be both. It literally can be both, because you're erasing everything about them. But to be that is immaterial, because you are able to go back to enjoying things that you once couldn't enjoy doing before. So this in turn will allow you to be a much happier and healthier individual, and that is what government says that this device will be used by the person, because in the long run the person would find it more beneficial for themselves, because of how they are able to go back to being who they were before, instead of being tied down to traumatic memories. And for those reasons, very proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You spoke for around 6 minutes and 40
6,
seconds, something like that, I think. Is it? How long?
26 seconds.
6 minutes, 26 seconds. Ooh, all right.
Oh,
Thank
here it
you.
says 6 minutes 40 seconds.
6 minutes.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
mine is
never mind.
6:40.
Oh.
Tak apalah, never mind. So, anyways, thank you, Prime Minister. Now I'd like to call upon the leader of opposition to present the case on the opposition side. Here. Woo.
Yeah. Okay, I will time you guys too. Either way.
All right, thank you, Leader of Opposition. Now I would like to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to the floor. Here, here.
Here, here.
Yeah,
Testing, can you hear me?
yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll time myself also. And I'll start now. I have a friend of mine who keeps breaking up with her boyfriend for over like 7 years. I don't know how many times they broke up, maybe like 10 times or more. And every time they get back together, even when the guy cheats or even when the guy does something bad, they keep getting back. She keep forgiving him and they keep getting back together. If this device really exists, I will like force her to take this device. But of course, that's not what we're going to do. Basically, we from the side government, we say that every person who is experiencing a breakup would voluntarily want to use this device. I'll start with a couple of rebuttals from side opposition. So side opposition's general idea is mainly saying that a person that is suffering from a breakup shouldn't use this device because the whole process or the whole trauma is actually something that they can learn and grow stronger from. But we from the side government, we want to say that when you experience a trauma, you don't automatically learn from it. You have to learn to deal with it for a period of time. You have to experience and suffer with the trauma for a couple of times before you actually learn to crawl out from the trauma. So we from the side government, what we want to propose now is saying that the things that you lose when you're in that state of trauma, where you're unable to crawl out from the trauma, is something that you shouldn't lose, and it's something very precious to you to the point where even when you learn to deal with it, you should still forget about the trauma. So side opposition here says that when you use the device, you will lose the good and bad memory together. You will lose the emotional weight of what has happened. You will lose the conviction of your past self. And they say that this will enable more toxic relationship. But I just want to rebut on this where even when you don't use the device, you will also enable more toxic relationships. From the example that I give with my friend just now, they are unable to reject their couple. They're unable to move on. They keep thinking that because they have this emotional attachment to that person, that they have to keep trying, and maybe the next time they will become a better person. They already know that they're incapable of separating from that person, even when that person is not good for them. So with the use of this device, when they are able to complete, when they have a power in which they can completely forget about a person, they should definitely use it so that they can get out from this toxic relationship. And that is how this device actually helps to prevent more toxic relationships from happening. And we from the side government, we don't think that side opposition is going to prevent more toxic relationships from happening. That they are also going to enable more toxic relationships by staying in the status quo. And side opposition also mentioned how we lose the ability to bond more, and how that when we deny the trauma and we build the resistance from the trauma, we will learn to deal with the trauma. But we from the side government think that the amount of effort you put in to deal with the trauma, the things that you lose when you learn to deal with the trauma, is actually a lot more than the end effect that you get from dealing with the trauma. Like, for example, when you're in a trauma, when you're so stressed because of a relationship, you can't really function well. You cannot even get out of bed. And as a normal working adult, you cannot even work properly. This will also affect your relationships with your friends and your family when you're suffering from a breakup. We think that all these things that you lose from the trauma of a breakup, to the point where it will affect your work, you will maybe get demoted, and a lot more. It will also affect your relationships with your friends and your families. We think that all these things should not exist. Yes, please, POI. What do you, okay, I'm not gonna ask back. Even though I don't quite get the part where you say you not gonna change anything. So the part where you say that the example with my friend is a minority, and why is it that we should be the one ignoring the minority when they are the one that is suffering the most, when they are the one that ends up in a toxic relationship? Because people who are able to get out of that toxic relationship, they are able to build resistance from that toxic relationship. But what about those people who can never get out of that trauma? What about that people who let that trauma overpower them instead? So we think that this device is able to help them, not only the minority, but also all those other people that even if they learn to deal with the trauma, at least those people with minority, they get to forget about the trauma as well. So my points here are actually related with my rebuttals also. My points are how this device will help to cope with the sadness and help the person to move on. Instead, so when we are in a state of trauma, we tend to do stupid things. Like, for example, we tend to eat a lot, which is bad for our health. We also tend to have a bad anger issue with our friends and families. We think that by dealing with the trauma at the point where the trauma just has started in the first place, you will be able to be free of that emotional attachment in which you are not able to let go of. And also we think, why is it best for you to completely forget that person is because usually you're not going to associate again with your ex, right? I'm a firm believer that an ex can never be a friend. So even if you associate back with your ex, won't be a pleasant memory. And we think that it is best for you to use this device to forget entirely about your experience of being in love, so that you can move on and start a new relationship. So usually when we are in a relationship, right, we tend to think about the things that we did in our past relationship, and it sort of become a trauma for us in our past relationship. We think that, like, for example, when you see a new like boba drink that your ex used to like, and then when you look at that drink now, you will feel sad again thinking about that memory. We think that by using this device and forgetting about that memory completely altogether, it will help you to move on, and it will also help you to enjoy the little things in your life. And that is why we are more than proud to oppose. I'm actually more than 7 minutes.
Yeah. Speakers speak for 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay.
Usually it's like 7:15 lah paling maximum. Orang boleh, adjudicator sanggup kasih, but the rest cannot lah. Alright, thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Now I would like to call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to support the case on the opposition side. Here.
Kejap, korang boleh dengar kan the clap?
Actually, no.
I didn't hear.
No.
What clap?
No?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Clap manually lah. Sorry.
Fine.
Okay, go on.
Right, so I'll be also timing myself. As the ancient ones always say, relationship is a process of a give and take. So in every relationship, there is something that you give and there is something that you take from each other. So ladies and gentlemen, what has side government's case has been throughout this whole debate? The whole debate has been about what about, from the Prime Minister to the Deputy Prime Minister. It has never been about what is actually can be happening or what should be happening after this machine is being used. Let me start rebutting from the Deputy Prime Minister, right? The Deputy Prime Minister came up with an example of how her friend keep getting back to her ex, which seem to have a toxic relationship. That is the whole purpose of love. What is the reason of you being in a relationship if you do not want to actually work it out and you do not want to actually reach the end point, which is to be together until the end of your life? If you do not promise that in the earliest of your relationship, there is no point for you to actually fall in love with each other. And the second thing that the Deputy Prime Minister keeps speaking about is about toxic relationship. The problem here is that the Deputy Prime Minister did not define toxic relationship as what she thinks toxic relationship is. But from our point of view, we think this whole toxic relationship that she is referring to is something that is going to build somebody's relationship between is going to build a relationship between two people to become even better. It's something that is going to create more understanding in a relationship, something that is going to make this relationship something that is so strong that even the cupids cannot actually break it down. So ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the first point came up with the Deputy Prime Minister, right? She came to speak something about cope with sadness and move on and stuff like that. The thing on side opposition is, why do we need to actually move on in a relationship when you can actually make the relationship work? That is actually well explained when the Deputy Prime Minister came up with the example of a friend who's trying to work her relationship up till date. Now, moving on to the Prime Minister, right? He came up to speak about how it's better for mental well-being, like how when the moment you erase these memories, you do not have to think about whatever that has happened, but you can actually go on to live this positive life. But when I actually PO'd him saying that erasing all these memories will also erase this whole skill that you have built during this relationship, this clearly proves that you will not have this whole entire memory of what you have been doing in the relationship, including the sports, the hobby, the television show that you have been actually sharing to watch with each other. This clearly proves that you're not going to have any single memory of it, but you're just going to go on to move on and not even think about it. And this will lead to where my points will come later. So ladies and gentlemen, what is side opposition fighting for today? Side opposition is saying the reason this whole machine should not even be given to people to use is because it's like you're giving a lab rat to voluntarily get into a medical testing just because you want that, without them knowing that at the end of the day it's a harm to themselves. What we are trying to say that this whole harm should not even be a harm to these humans at the end of the day, when we can actually make it a better advantage for them, which is to become a better person or become a better person in another relationship. So the first thing is, side opposition truly oppose this whole idea of this machine is because we think that by giving people this machine, you're ripping off the choice to this person to actually grow from the relationship. You're actually ripping off the choice from this person to actually learn from the mistakes they have been making in this whole relationship, right? And so, what if in a point of time, without this machine, you can actually choose to become a better person, but with this machine, you cannot actually become a better person because you don't even remember the mistakes you have made before. This has not been highlighted by side government, and we think that is the main flaw of side government. Also, yes.
Do you or do you not agree that breakup is actually a last resort, like the last step in the relationship where you have already tried everything that you can to fix the relationship, but it just won't work? Don't you think that breakup is like the end point, the last resort?
Yes, we do think it's the end result. But even after this end result, you can come back to a point where, oh, I think I should get back with this person because I was a better person with this person. So at the end of the day, when you give this machine to a person to use, right, you are taking away the choice for them to become the better person that they want to become, even though they want to continue the relationship. In your status quo, you're trying to say that, let me give you this machine, you forget about this person, and you will never become the better person that you want to be in this relationship or by yourself. But in our status quo, we're saying, without giving this whole machine to this person, you can become a better person by just working on or moving forward in this relationship, right? And then like what I was saying before, there will be no experience to teach this person to become a better person. Although they want to remain in a relationship or they want to move forward, they can never become a better person because the whole memory of whatever that has happened is already removed. Like I've said before, you're just making a person to become a lab rat, which they do not understand at the end of the day, it's going to be a harm for them to actually die. It's going to be a harm that they will not want to accept. Now, moving on to the second point, right, which is where we think that when you give this person this whole machine to use, right, this person is going to start to forget everything that has happened throughout the whole time. Because since side government has failed to actually prove to us what is going to be erased and what's not, we are going to assume that everything that has happened in the timeline of their relationship is going to be removed. Whether be it you becoming better in your career, whether be it you becoming better in your sports, whether be it you are becoming a better person by yourself in the relationship, right? It's all going to be erased just by this one machine. So we believe that by using this machine, what happens to the person is that they're going to forget everything that they learned. They're going to forget that they have become a better person, and they have to start from the starting. They have to go back to point zero to start from where they were actually before the relationship for them to become better. So at the end of the day, what is going to happen under this government status quo is that this person is going to forget everything. This person is going to be the whole new person that has become before this relationship, and they have to work their way out all the way to grow. They have to become a better person just by learning it back all over again without having the memory of the mistakes they have been made. So we believe that things that they learn in a relationship is necessary for them to hold on to, for them to become a better person, for them to even build a better relationship. Whether be it they want to build a new relationship, or whether be it they want to go on with a toxic relationship that so-called government is actually quoting in their whole debate, right? So we believe that this, from what side opposition is strongly opposing here, we believe the side government is trying to erase or rip off every choice, every memory that this whole person has actually gained in a relationship. We believe that this is not a healthier choice, and we believe we should oppose this motion. Thank you.
Speaker speak for 7 minutes and 9 seconds.
Thank you, the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Now I would like to call the last member of the side government to conclude the case. Here.
Here.
Oh, I realized the third speaker of opposition is not here.
What?
The third speaker of opposition.
Oh God.
Oh God.
Ask Neeraj to become third speaker also.
You know what? Since I'm the one always writing, maybe I could be the third speaker, but just for fun.
Oh shit. You just want
Pasal siapa nak jadi edge?
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna judge myself. What I say doesn't count. It's just like, just fulfilling the role.
formality lah, completing the thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just to
cool.
complete the shit. Just to complete shit. I don't carry my own
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I would like to call upon the last speaker of the government side to conclude the case on the government side. Here.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Okay, greetings to members of the hall. We are talking about love today, a topic very familiar with everyone here today. As we can see, everyone has given their points. And I am here to point out why the opposition has failed to realize what the government is trying to imply. Well, you see, when it comes to relationships, of course, there are good memories, there are bad memories, just like how Lam portrayed it. But we have to realize that learning moments in this context, when it comes to this device being in the fray, we have to realize that Povin has already mentioned that this device is for people who are in their best intentions. They have already considered all the aspects of the person before deciding to use the device in the first place, which directly makes the leader of the opposition's argument invalid when she said, "Oh, we have to learn from our mistakes." Don't you think the person has already learned and noted down why they should start forgetting in the first place, and they have considered to use the device? And I shall rebut on the second point as well. She mentioned that by not using this device and just taking in all the traumatic experiences, it risks losing good memories as well. You know, we lose the essence of what makes us happy. Well, that is statement wise, it is correct, but it doesn't solve the problem that we have here. Emotional calluses, yes, it is part of relationships, but we need to realize that this device is for people who are breaking up with a bad background. People who are in a good relationship, of course, they won't even consider using the device because they are breaking up on mutual causes, and they are able to handle that state of breakup well because it doesn't really imply that it's a very traumatic relationship, as opposed to what we are trying to say, where we are referring to relationships that are particularly toxic, which what I'm trying to say here is that the opposition is advocating holding on onto abusive and traumatic memories instead of just allowing the person to move on fully without allowing those bad memories to affect later parts in their lives. They are jeopardizing the person's ability to make improvements in life without being interrupted by all these bad memories, which ultimately doesn't let them fulfill their potential as a person. And the opposition today has failed to acknowledge that the paradigm of these devices used is it's purely individual, where it is very clear that everyone has different capacities to handle trauma. Whereby those who are going through no thanks, where those who are going through bad relationships, abusive relationships, traumatic memories, they tend to suffer from mental illnesses directly. So they tend to fall back into abusive habits such as self-harm, cutting themselves, just like Povin mentioned before.
You
Now we
are
shall go ahead. Go ahead.
right. So now, when you say right, they're going to have this whole trauma being traumatizing their whole mental and stuff like that, right? How sure are you they're going to make a very sensible decision, like what you actually claim? Your first speaker has actually said they're going to take this whole decision once they have actually think it through.
Why are you contradicting yourself? Like you guys, as the opposition, have clearly mentioned, even you have mentioned that this device being given to a person is like giving a lab rat a device. The choice to learn is stripped away. You are literally taking away the choice for people to make before using the device in the first place. Prioritizing mental health is a choice. No, thank you. Let me continue. Okay, let me rebut the deputy leader of the opposition. Like he said, people become lab rats when they are given the choice to use the device, and the choice to learn is stripped away. They are neglecting again the individuality of the person who has clearly taken the time to consider this whole thing. And yet again, by stating that this is taking away people's choices, Nirosh has failed to explain how they actually become a better person, especially in the context of them being in a very toxic relationship. So from there, what do I say now? Okay, this highlights the weight of the argument where the opposition has clearly only focused on replying to our emotions instead of actually explaining why allowing people to hold on to all these abusive relationships actually help them in the first place in detail. We all know the saying goes, it's better to let go than to hold on to something that is no use to us in the future. So by stating this, I am very proud to propose, stating that if the government wins the motion today, we have surely allowed people to spare their life of further suffering in terms of bad mental health issues. And we have also provided the burden of proof towards the opposition, where they have failed to prove that this this device being in the fray in terms of relationships has advocated relationships into being a productive source for them to learn, when all it's doing is just making them more and more what's the word? More and more miserable. With that, I'm happy to propose. Thank you.
Speaker
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
for 5 minutes and 50 seconds.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was better, man. A bit too lah, a bit like a robot. Wait, so should we wait for Fahanim to join or?
I think you can just go on with adjudication.
I was like, you
What
know
did
what?
she say?
She said, "Sorry guys, just joined." Is
Oh,
it?
that one is
No, no.
someone else.
Oh, sorry, someone else.
That one is Jabir.
You know what? It's been so long since I debated, so you know what? Might as well just try lah once. It's been so long, for God's sakes.
Yeah, go
If you
ahead.
guys don't mind lah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, in terms of their lives, yada yada yada. Why this decision? Yeah. All right. Wait, I'm gonna time myself. It's been so long, so I'm gonna be a bit rusty. In this debate, the most important part about in terms of individual, in terms of after a breakup is first in terms of how we should see in terms of our past relationship. Second, in terms of how that we do in terms of the problems that exist within the relationship. And thirdly is how do we be able to move on from that relationship set, right? So those are the three issues that we want to discuss in this entire debate. So let's just compare in terms of how does the entire government being able to put out in this debate. So they made in terms of the past relationship, in terms of trauma, they like in terms of previous speakers said, they fail to recognize in terms of what does this in terms of this trauma that they will be able to in terms of, because trauma in itself is different when it comes to how people perceive it. Because does the trauma exist because of the relationship, or does the trauma exist because of this individual's reaction to that breakup, right? So that's the problem that it exists. So let's just assume that this entire trauma exists because of the relationship, right? So when you in yourself, when that exists, my previous speaker said, you do not be able to reflect upon your past relationships. You cannot be able to reflect in terms of your trauma. Thus, since you're not being able to gain all the knowledges and skill, the likelihood for you to be able to go back into in terms of these traumatic relationships, because you learn nothing from this, is going to be able to exist more. Let's just put in terms of the point, the same example that the DPM came in. They have the memories already. They have in terms of, even if they have the memories, they already go back into the relationship, and even if they lost the memory, I bet you they're going to do the same thing, because they still don't learn, because humanity never learns, right? So in terms of that's also the regardless of the situation, that there's more likelihood to exist on their side, because the traumatic experience is just not reflected but merely forgotten, and really forgotten, right? So the second thing in terms of how they want to be able to say in terms of how we should see that relationship, this is how the entire opposition is actually being able to see it. In terms of, we see this relationship regardless of in terms of good and bad. The most important part is that we are individuals, as people can be able to learn from things as an individual, because understand that in terms of emotion, in terms of human development, can only be able to be given in terms of as time passes by through experiences. Because you can have like a man child, for God's sakes, that doesn't learn anything and doesn't even grow up in the first place. So under our side, the most important part is that we, even in the worst case scenario that this traumatic exists, that we can be able to, in terms of a better place, in terms of how we have in the other in terms of supports that we already have. For instance, mental health issues. If you want to have mental health issues, see a therapist. If you have, for instance, you don't know how to do with your breakup, maybe you don't know how to move on from your breakup, maybe go see a dating coach, for God's sakes. Because even in the modern world, in terms of the support structures, in terms of how the nuances of dealing with relationship is already a prevalent thing in the real world. So that means is that the support is already exists, but it's only up to those individuals given the choice. So this is where this in terms of government, our side opposition give, because we give you the choice. We give you the ability to be able to move, like be able to either, move on or literally let go with your own choices. Even if that you put in terms of this idea that you already made the entire choices, you already made the choices and sensible, but regardless, it's unturnable, right? So that means that you don't have any capabilities to be able to return. So that's not in itself is a greater choice. So let's just say in the worst case scenario, we don't give the choice of people, like not being able to, erase in terms of their problems. We say that in terms of when you are becoming a better person, when you are becoming better in terms of how to deal with relationships, that means you can create a better opportunity for yourself. And this is how it is the most important part in our debate, right? In terms of opposition, is how do we move on from this relationship? We say that in terms of the entire side government, only being able to say that the most important part is that you forget. That's it. Because like they don't tell you they only tell you in terms of the effect is the best is that you get to be able to live in terms of your normal life. You get to enjoy in terms of those positivity. But let's just be honest. Throughout this entire debate, we understand that in terms of what makes a human is not just being, vibing of positivity, but instead to be able to, go through life in terms of its problems and be able to analyze it. Because even if in our worst case scenario that these individual, like being abusive or something like that, in terms of there are still support structures that exist. In terms of those and the likelihood for these people to, if these people have the strength to survive through these relationships, they would end up better rather than these individuals who forget and then tries to do the same thing. Because, like people have a very short span of memories in the first place, right? So those are in terms of the issues that exist in this entire debate. So what we have presented to you is actually in terms of the more conclusive and more concrete idea of how do we see those relationships, because the most important part is not the people that's participated in it, but in terms of our perspective towards those relationships is the biggest problem. So when it comes, so literally the perspective is in terms of us, at least we are given the choice to be able to think, to be able to assess, to be able to become better, and in terms of our new relationships that's going to move forward. So even if that we are be able to go back, that means we are actually able to retain in terms of all of our knowledges and be able to go back with our relationship, rebound, for God's sakes, then we can actually be able to know that we are in a better position than we were before we were in a relationship. So in those kinds of situations, we can be able to become better. So in that worst case scenario, right, their best case scenario is that these individuals get to live in terms of the life that they had before the relationship, not taking in terms of the sweet and sour in terms of life, and in terms of creating this and living in terms of this ignorant fantasy whereby the problem is not him but it's just other people. It's just this woman, and just live on with his life. And our best case scenario, in terms of our best case scenario, is that these individuals could become better individuals within your new relationship, within a new, since they have been able to change in terms of their perspective towards a relationship, right? So and then we'll be able to move on. In our worst case scenario is that these people being able to have not been able to move on with those traumas, but even then, if they are willing to be able to have, they have already support structures that exist to be able to maintain in terms of individual. With that, I rest my case. Thank you. Whew. It's been so long.
Walau Cheryl.
It's been so
Flexing.
long. It's been so long, Rusty.
Your face
Okay
is
lah.
Flexing on
red, man.
us.
That's him without practice. Can you imagine?
Been some time. There
Giving
was
tak puji to
Tak puji.
no, I noticed I bring up something new actually into the debate.
yeah, you kinda.
Yeah, I can
It's
edit. I had no
the
choice.
narrative
No
is
one will
very
penalize you.
Yeah, it's okay. lah.
You have the flaw, so no one is going to. Okay, cool.
He will
Alright.
later he will
So-
criticize himself in his adjudication.
Come on. I wouldn't do that lah. I would see myself as being sucky quite a bit. Okay, so actually, in all honesty, this motion was actually in MIDP. Wait, I'm going to send the URL to the group so you guys can see lah. So you guys, when it comes to us, you guys can compare with your debates with MIDP and see maybe, because it's a very short demo debate, so you guys can, you know, yeah. It's already sent to the WhatsApp group.
And Lam, what's the movie you said? The title of the movie? Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless. Okay. I don't even know the movie.
Yeah, I never knew also. All right. In terms of
Do you want some time?
yeah, just give me a moment for a while.
Do
Yeah.
you want to be in your own room?
No, I'll just mute and stop video lah for a while. Yeah. Just give me a moment.
Did I? I forgot. Oh. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. That's the thing. At least you have a faint outline of what you want to say after this. Instead of me, I'm all over the place. I can make a good opening, but I tend to get carried away, so I prefer not to lah in context of debate.
And go toilet.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay. Somehow make our side have the more feasible way of handling the motion instead of the opposition lah. Okay. Okay, got it. I don't think I had an ending. My ending was like, uh, yeah, that explains it lah. I was all over the place. As a way. Okay.
Yeah, um, it's better to rebut based on points than based on speaker.
So I can agree on my opposition's points to the extent that I prove them not being able to solve the problem in the first place lah. But I can agree lah. Like I can say that like what you said is correct, but mine makes more sense in this motion.
Status quo.
Okay. Oh, okay, I get the point. Most debates about feminism are very fiery, in my opinion. I've seen a lot that are just triggering people. Is she here? Oh no.
I'm here. Yeah, feminism. It's like sometimes if you are in the opposition side, you had to be the bad person, you know. You had to disagree. So sometimes when I be the opposition, I will be very calm and collected so that it won't go against my own belief lah, because I a firm believer of a feminist mindset. So sometimes you had to go there lah, because like I listen to a lot of religious debate and feminist debate. So sometimes we don't actually have apa solution to that debate itself, but we are discussing about the solution, faham tak? The
Okay.
debate might be about the debate might be about the current issue that is happening right now, but the solution is not yet found, faham tak? So that's why lah. Sometimes it's a bit tricky. Go ahead now. But that is risky lah. Yeah, it's risky. Sometimes the adjudicator might be strict.
Okay. Moving on to the biggest loophole in all my speeches. What do I need to know about politics? Like the basic stuff. What is right? What is left? I don't know. What is it?
Politic. This is
No, at least the very basic stuff I need to know. Like Utopia, we all know now. It's like a very
Oh,
dream
oh yeah,
dream
yeah.
world kind of thing.
Okay, so right wing is usually like people who are more conservative, so they hold conservative values, more religious usually, but not necessarily, but usually more religious lah. But mainly they are more capitalist, so they believe in less government intervention. So like they want the free market to determine most of the things, like prices and all. Whereas left wing politics are more socialist. So usually that's defined as like more government. So like things like subsidies, um, like healthcare for all, universal basic income, all these fall under left wing politics.
Alright, I'm gonna take time to understand that. So is it like the left side of government is more liberal and progressive, and the right hand side is like conservative and traditional?
Not necessarily, but usually that's how it goes.
Okay, okay. So I can consider that as a very solid way of understanding it, right?
Yeah, in a
But
way
it's
lah.
a bit tricky. It's a bit
Yeah.
tricky lah
It
because
is, yeah, yeah, yeah.
every
Every
country
case is
has
different.
has a different political view. For example, in Malaysia, right, we have like these Islamic views and also not so Islamic, and then based on race view. So it's a bit tricky to understand the politic in Malaysia rather than the politic in other country. But other country also has their own problem and their own messiness. But to understand the politic in Malaysia, you have to really interested in politics lah, Koen, I would say, because for me it doesn't even make sense, sometimes politic
For
in
me,
Malaysia.
yeah. Okay,
Hmm?
okay.
Sorry.
In my experience of speaking about politics, it's never about politics as a whole. I just end up making fun of politics. Like in my public speaking speech, I said that Malaysian politics is like Netflix's House of Cards, lots of chaos. So I just end up making references instead of actually addressing politics as a whole. Because I don't know anything about politics. The best I can do is just make it into a comedy skit. That's the thing.
If you don't have a politic, read a bit lah. For example, like in Malaysia right now, we have Anwar wanting to be the prime minister. Sorry.
President of the United States, Ayo, BJ.
Senyap kan?
Bangsa president, Ayo.
BJ is
Kau ni
from
kan geram.
Texas.
I'm from
Oh, BJ from
no, I'm
Texas.
from California.
Yeah.
She's the one they fly the
The Texas.
Kelantan is like Texas.
Shut
Kelantan is
up.
like Alabama.
Yeah,
Texas
yeah,
is
Alabama, not Texas. I get confused between those two. Sweet home Alabama.
Sweet home Alabama.
Right, you guys are good?
Good.
All right. So when it comes to adjudicating this debate, since I cannot count myself, so I had to, I think, adjudicate the debate until the second speaker of the opposition last. So from there, I had to judge the debate from there and there, because it's like it's not fair for like to not count my debate, and then like like the only defense. So the government had a better defense and offense last on their case. So I would stop the adjudication. I will adjudicate, starting from the second speaker and the first speaker lah for each houses. So the conclusion that I make is that I give the winning house to the, wait, I want to make sure, government side. So in terms of the government side, right? So actually, my speech was what is already given in terms of the idea of what I was looking forward to. So there was like in terms of how the relationship went, how was the relationship, and in terms of the breakup itself, and how do we cope up, what happens afterwards. So those were the three things that I think like the main issue that everybody was mostly talking about. So in terms of actually the characterization was quite well actually proven It was actually quite well, but it's just that in terms of the characterization of how does the relationship looks like. I think that it's easiest the way to put in terms of relationship is just it ended in terms of in the most mutual in terms of it ended it just ended. It doesn't have to have like a toxic relationship or anything. It's just in terms of people just maybe just they fall out of love, or they maybe in terms of a very general kind of idea, like my perspective, it would be a lot safer rather than to pinpoint in a specific like this person was toxic and then like everybody, that's why this person breaks up. If you put in terms of restrict in terms of towards like a specific like this, the breakup that was like very toxic, so it's kind of restrict the debate. So if you put it in terms of a very general manner, it's quite in terms of that. So what do I give in terms of the edge towards the of the government side, right? So the government side told me in terms of how the perspective of the past, right? So they told me in terms of, like the problem is that how this person in terms of view that relationship, right? In terms of how this person there is how interpreted in terms of trauma is that actually how does this person deal with that, like this sudden disattachment from that person, like being left alone, being not particularly trauma in terms of like hitting someone, but in terms of emotional disattachment. So I see it in terms of that way lah. So the emotional disattachment in terms exists in terms of the problems of the past is actually better in terms of their side, in terms of the opposition side, in terms of how they've been able to move on with their lives, in terms of the problem of immediate effects of a breakup. For instance, like especially the second speaker comes in and tells me that there's an immediate effect of that breakup, and in terms of the perspective of the past. For instance, if you falling out in terms of work, falling out in terms of relationships with your other people, those effects could actually affect immediately when it comes to your relationship. So you need to be able to forget and move on in the most sensible manner, right? So in terms of that's also in terms of how, in terms of perspective of the past. So when it comes to the one thing I had a problem when it comes to the government side, right? There is in terms of this how can I say you tell me in terms of there is this good experience, there is this bad experiences. You tell me in terms of like the problems of forgetting these good and bad experiences. You tell me in terms of how does this be able to move on, but in terms of you don't tell me in terms of especially in terms of your rebuttal, Lam, which was actually you're saying that this is not the last relationship, right? I wish that you could have expanded more in terms of that, because like moving on to the next relationship, like is also part of moving on, right? So if you were to tell me in terms of like if in terms of how this is be able to move on to a next relationship, and even if they rebounds, like it will have a different effect, like if you emphasis on that, I think you could have made a stronger case lah, in my perspective. It's like but of course, in terms of the opposition came in with this idea that like you need to have to be able to forget, in terms of to carry out in terms of your daily life, to be able to be normal to be normal, because these experiences affects you as a human being. So it's the problem is that they understand that you cannot be normal again, so they need to be able to move on. So, and then came into the second speaker, right? I think like the deputy leader of opposition, there were a few things that I think like the motion was very interesting. It's like there is a device that could eliminate all memories you have of a particular person. So it's like it points out to a particular individual rather than the events of throughout your entire life. It's like you erasing someone, and then you sort of like you just remember it in terms of you being in yourself. Like if I were you, I would have interpreted it that way, because like sometimes it's better for you to interpret it in terms of like the best case scenario. For instance, because it is better for, how can I say this? Because like if you were to compare, right, between like it's easier for you if you're in opposition to say that like everything is gone, because like all the skills, all it's easier. But if you make if you make yourself harder by saying that the particular person is gone, but also the experiences that you had in terms of the morals that you learn from this person, because a human interaction can only be your growth as a human is only being able to be is only through human interactions, through human emotions, to genuine human exchange of emotions. I think that would have been a lot better when it comes to your case. The second, and then you could have actually be emphasized in terms of that starting from scratch. You can tell me in terms of how does this start from scratch can be able to, if you start from, if these people, were to erase the memories, they start from scratch in terms of their lives, in terms of how they see a new relationship and how they're going to see in terms of the new world. I think that could have been a very interesting argument as to compare in terms of your first argument, because there were a lot more that you could have done with the entire thing lah. So when it comes to DPM, right, the Deputy Prime Minister, it is actually quite okay for you to give up in terms of a personal experience, but usually people would not recommend it that much. People would always put in terms of a more generalized idea. For instance, like it is normally to occur for people, to like rebound for someone or to go back with their relationships and do it over and over again, rather than putting yourself in terms of a very personal perspective. There's a very, very important reason why people don't put personal perspective is because one, sometimes, it's maybe in isolated cases whereby it's only that happens to you. Or secondly, like sometimes as you an individual, you feel like your feelings are not invalidated when someone rebuts your, examples. So I think like it's better that you put it in terms of a very generalized manner rather than putting it as your personal perspective. That's my take on it, because I never do personal stuff because I just don't want that kind of problem. Secondly, in terms of I wish there was a bit more support on terms of your prime minister, because it was quite because it was an interesting idea of like which one is better, giving up on in the relationship or being persistent, like whether it's either that you should be persistent on for trying to move on from the relationship or just completely forget it. I think it could have been a very interesting like clashes that you could have explored more. So which one is more important, persistence on for moving on from a relationship, or just completely forgetting it and starting from a new one? So I think it would be like a very interesting clash lah. So those are the main reasons that I give like some of my perspective. So anyone want to have any questions or anything want to add?
What did you think of the rebuttals by Kieran? Can you offer anything he did well, anything that he should improve?
Yeah. Sorry, Kieran. I literally forgot to talk about you.
Sorry. I need your pointers.
Okay, so if I was going to rebut on someone, I would not rebut on their examples. That's the first thing I would say. Yeah, I would rebut in terms of their ideas or the issue that they are trying to, for instance, to point out. So for instance, right, when it comes to, if I was Kieran, right, he was trying to say, it was actually a good idea in terms of what is the most important part in terms of the choice, right? I think you could have expanded a lot more on that idea of choice. So it's like, which one is like most important part, like giving the choice of a person to forget or not giving that choice at all. So I think you could have expanded in terms of that rebuttal, and to the point, at some point, if you expand it a bit more, you can literally make an entire argument out of it. So rather than pointing out in terms of examples, for instance, like, the example of what happens if this person, right? Rather than putting on that, emphasis on that, emphasis on the issues of on the issue itself. Secondly, if you want to rebut, the best one is also being comparative. That's why it's like actually I've heard a lot of debaters like the most important thing is to be comparative in terms of how both sides, there are issues that you guys are going to debate about. So you try to like make it like, what are the issues? So for instance, in this debate, one of the most important issues is how you moved on, right? How do you move on from this relationship? So which side is actually being able to, for instance, to be able to do better? So you give in terms of, okay, our side is better because of this, and their side is bad because of this. So and then if you can make your arguments and your rebuttals better by putting it with what they call as an even if statement. So even if it's like a very interesting case, it's a very interesting tool whereby you put in terms of this argument, your enemy's argument, put it in the most strongest position, but even in this most strongest argument, it still is like messed up. So for instance, in this debate, right, I want to be able to say, like, even if this person were to be able to move on, regardless of the situation, this person will be scarred. For instance, will be able to not have the same connections and be expecting in terms of the same biases that exist from the past relationship, thus making it harder for him to move on from that relationship. So what I did was, even if that this person being able to move on, which is like, the best thing that could happen from side opposition, I would say that this person would still have biases. This person would still have a hard time relationships because he would be comparing in terms of his past relationships, thus not being able for him to move on. So that's how in terms of few styles that you can rebut. So issues, making it stronger and being comparative. If you guys can be in terms of comparative, in terms of rebuttals, and especially if you're the whip, you really need to be like very comparative, because you want to give the adjudicators, because like if we all know being an adjudicator is very hard, like sitting there for almost an hour thinking of people. So they would really enjoy it if someone tells you, like swap, like telling you all the good stuff. Oh, this is why we are good. This is why we're good. So it would be a lot easier being comparative. Does it make sense, Kiran?
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't. All right. Anyone? Does anybody have a question?
What would you say was the deciding factor in the win or the loss? The deciding factor.
The deciding factor. Wait, let me see. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like a specific example, but maybe just like the comparative or the conclusion or the setting up, or I mean like in terms of those lah.
In my perspective, I think like I pick in terms of the outcome that, like, for instance, if I was a regular human being and I went through a normal breakup, like I put that in terms of my perspective, and then I compare in terms of which one was being able, the likelihood that that outcome were to reach, for instance, like, and then the benefits of it. So those were the two things lah. If I was a regular human being, I wanted to decide whether to not erase my past relationship or not. I would say, like, do I want the benefits of it and the likelihood that how would I react to it as a reasonable human being. So that's why when I see in terms of the government side, it's like, yeah, I mean, like, if I was even if it was a beautiful relationship, right, I'm still going to be able to be affected by it. People around me is still going to be affected by it. People, my surroundings is still not going to be the same. So I would really like to be able to, go back. So like, and then the government says, like, you shouldn't go back because, you need those experiences. You need to be able in terms of, move on with your life. Yeah, but how does this help me, with my other relationships? At least if I go back, like towards where I'm from, where is the current I am right now, at least is that, I'm not affected by my past relationships. I don't have all of this, baggage that I have to carry. I just, like, starts from scratch. What's the problem, with that kind of idea. So that one was like, I was thinking, if I put this in terms of what's the benefit and what's the likelihood of the outcome. That's what I perspective lah. That's what the things I was using. Does it make sense?
Yeah, for me, because it's always very, very tricky with an actor debate.
Yeah, it's actually very tricky because you have to characterize the person, have to characterize the relationship, you have to characterize a few things to make sure that the debaters make But if I was an adjudicator, if it was a character, that kind of debate, I would put myself in a position as a very reasonable human being lah. Unless like suddenly the prime minister wants to specify it, but it will be quite restrictive of a debate lah if the prime minister restrict. It's better that you just keep it open and make it a reasonable human being. So, but anyways, you guys, whatever it is, you guys, if you feel like, you want to compare notes, I think like the best one is to go straight to the video. I think it was like only a 30 minutes video. So it's like, at least you guys can compare a few notes to them of how they debate.
I remember there was this debate in IIUM that we joined. And then the Edge said that we could have gotten first, but it was because our points were more suited to this house believes that motion and not an actor motion. But he said if it was a THBT motion, then you guys would have gotten first. So it's always
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very, very tricky.
Yeah, that always happens lah. Usually just that one thing lah, that one thing, piece of shit.
You remember that, Lam? Khalis was the edge.
So
The
anything
first
to
78
clarify?
and 79 I ever got, and the only I think that I will ever get.
Oh, that's high, man. That's high.
That guy
I
gave
have a
everyone high
question.
marks.
I'm a bit stingy though when it comes to my marks, you know. That's the
Yeah.
problem about me. I'm like 75, 76, I remember was average. 77 to 78 was like above average.
Yeah.
79 is like super good.
Super good. Yeah.
I'm very stingy.
PJ, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. For example, like if I were a speaker in this debate, kan, and like one of my family member gonna use this device, what happened to the other family member that are also included in this relationship? Faham tak?
Oh, okay. That
It's
is a
like
yeah.
because
That's
I'm the
okay.
only one who forget about this person, but people around me is going to remember them. Faham tak?
But
Like,
you know the
can
problem
we
about that is like it's a very situational kind of thing. You know, it's like if in this very specific situation, only that is a problem, in my perspective lah. If I was debating in this, right, is this because it's like a very it's not like an isolated case, but it's also not in line with what they call as the spirit of the debate, because the spirit of the debate is particularly in terms of the immediate effect towards this person and the relationship. So
But isn't this an immediate effect also? Because like every time you go out with this person, kan, it's gonna be
No,
someone around. It's gonna be
it's
someone around you. Faham tak?
it's because this
Even
motion
if you
is
forget,
PJ.
even if you forget about this person, people around you gonna macam ask you, okay, tak, contoh lah ni, this is just an example keluar dah ke dengan lelaki yang pakai spek tu, dulu selalu tengok awak keluar dengan dia, macam tu, faham tak? It's still gonna affect you because like even though it's not
My question
family
is
ke
who's
apa
the
kan.
lucky with spice, PJ?
Apa?
Tak ada apa.
Senyap kau ni kan. You
PJ,
emphasize something that doesn't matter. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's because this motion, right, it's an actor debate, so all you need to argue is whether this person would opt for it or not. So like
Still, you know,
but
even if
just having someone like ask you about things, would it be better to have those traumatic memories and be asked of it and be reminded, or to not have those memories and then people ask you and then you don't have those traumatic memories anymore, so you can just say I don't know that person. Also this motion, it assumes a world where this is possible, so people will know, oh, this person probably went for this procedure, that's why they don't remember this person anymore.
okay, cool. And also there's an interesting bukan face lah, apa question that Niraj asked kan, about how are you going to like remove that person, like is it a fragment or like is it just that person from the memory, faham tak?
I think in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I think they just removed the person, but I went with everything. I forgot the name.
you went with everything lah.
Okay, cool.
Then it's quite hard lah. But if I were you, I just like, you know, because like usually, right, even if you're if the prime minister said, right, for instance, I just want to remove this person from the entire thing, right, the opposition would usually just go with it. Because like you know, it's like if it's usually because it's like this assumption is people, even the opposition comes in like you cannot do that, you know, you cannot do that because of, you know, there's other agents, there's other people that exist. Actually, in truth, there's this assumption, I forgot what was the assumption, but it's the assumption that it is feasible. It's the assumption that, you know, whatever it is, you cannot be arguing in terms of feasibility, but you merely argue
it
in terms
goes
of
it
the
goes
issue and
against
the
the
idea.
spirit of the debate lah. If you just
Yeah,
argue
yeah.
feasibility.
Yeah. So it's like you cannot argue in terms of feasibility lah. So if I were you, I just go like, go crazy lah with my imagination. Just say remove this particular person and fuck off the rest. So
Yeah. I realized I should have said that, but I forgot the movie. So
it's okay lah. So anything you want to clarify?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What are clashes? How do they work?
Oh, okay. So clashes is like, for instance, right? The opening, for instance, the government says when it comes to this motion, right? For instance, the clashes that exist is yep. The after is like the aftermath of the relationship. So the aftermath of the relationship and how should you react to it, right? So that's the clash, because the government says that after the relationship you would want to forget about it and just go back to your life. So and then there's also, but the opposition also says that you would want to move on. You afterwards of the relationship you would want to move on and become a better person. So there's a clash of idea of which one is better. Like it's the same situation, but it's a different how do you approach it. Like the government says, forget so that you can go back to your square one, so that you can forget about everything. But the opposition says, is to be able to, for instance, to be able to move on to become a better person. So if a clash that exists, you need to be able to analyze which one is better for you as a person. So within that clash, I would, if for instance, if I was in the government, I would say, if for the government, I would say, I want to start from scratch, because I don't want to be able to be tied down by these relationships, because it's better. And then you add a bit more competitive. If I were, like for instance, if I would have to be able to move on, if I need to be able to pick in terms of the opposition, I would have to put a lot more effort, a lot more sacrifices, and requires a lot more support structure, for instance, kan. So then the clashes that exist, and then you tell in terms of those clashes, who wins. So if you were the government, if you're the government, of course you want to support the government. Like if you're the opposition, you want to support the opposition. So there's a clash in terms of ideas that exist. So you can identify these clashes by the issues that they were talking about. So when it comes to the issues, well, like in terms of, like I said, the past, in terms of the reaction, how people react. So, and then those are the issues and those are the clashes. And then we try to find who does better. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I get the gist of it.
Yeah, but in terms of application of it, it's the hardest lah. Especially if you're having an ignorant debate where nobody wants to, like nobody wants to argue against each other. That's a very ignorant debate.
So it's just a situation where we have two different paradigms that are just going against each other. We just have to prove which one is more feasible.
Yep. Yes. Feasible, better, like the likelihood of outcome,
And so it provides justice to the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
All right. Anything else?
I think it's the first time I'm asking advice from you.
Cheers to that, man.
That's the first in everything.
Yeah, that's the first in everything.
So anyone else want to ask any question? Sorry?
I don't have any question.
All right.
Okay.
Martha Wayne, you've been so quiet. What happened?
Maybe it's Martha, maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not Martha, right?
Maybe it's
Maybelline.
Yo, Martha, next time Martha, you have to debate next time. I haven't seen you debate in so long, for God's sake. Alah, malu, bullshit.
Next.
Buat macam ada maruah kalau kita.
Buat macam ada maruah. Aduh.
Oh my God, savage!
Kena kali aku.
Don't do our treasure like that, man.
Oh yeah, VP right? Aduh, sorry VP.
Apa? I give you.
I drag you here and then you get to flex to people and then you roast me balik. Wow, so ungrateful.
No, I just enjoy roasting people. You know.
I give him
Wow.
permission, Martha. I give him permission.
Walau
Rose.
tak apa.
Rose Martha.
Alamak, marah-marah pula. Okay. So, there's no more question lah.
No more
No.
question. Is there no more question?
Wait,
Okay.
I think I have a question.
Oh, baru dah.
Okay.
Kementerian Kesihatan ingin memaklumkan bahawa terdapat
Jangan
4
tanya
kluster
single ke
baru yang
tak
telah
lah.
Weh, gila.
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Carol confirm single lah.